Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Mind Shifter Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we're starting a brand new week, and happy Memorial Day to everybody. And the call-in number is 646-200-4169. And Carol Guy is operating your switchboard for us today. Thank you so much, Carol, for stepping in for us. Michael and I actually, at this moment, are sitting in a car broken down on the side of the road waiting for somebody to come by and help us. So anyway, 646-200-4169. And here's Dr. Ryce.
And we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions, your comments, anything you have to share from the use of the tools, any refinement on the tools. And, of course, the main tool that we're working with is the tool of Aramaic forgiveness. I say Aramaic forgiveness because we've been taught something totally and completely backward about forgiveness in our culture. Most everybody goes around talking about how they've forgiven them. Well, I forgave this one, that one, that one. I know that oftentimes other people say, oh, I hear you're doing that workshop on forgiveness, that Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, Michael, but I don't need to go. I've already forgiven everybody, my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, my kids, my parents, my spouse, my former spouse. I've even forgiven my future spouses. And what I know by that language is we're talking to a person who's done no forgiveness work yet, zero, because forgiveness has absolutely nothing to do with letting other people or yourself off the hook for what's happened. In the ancient Aramaic, the root of the work that we're doing, the Aramaic language, the word forgive represents a tool with which you go inside yourself and change the content of your mind. It's the way you remove what never belonged in a human mind. Any form of hostility and fear is an aberrant energy within our human minds. It doesn't belong there. And you'll notice if you look back over your life at the times when you've done something you regret, it's been the times when there's been some form of hostility or fear. And so what we're here to support you in, and what the Aramaic tool that we've learned from the ancient scriptures is about, is how to go in and remove all hostility and fear. If you're not familiar with that tool, we'd invite you to get yourself familiar. There is a link on our website. If you go to www.whyagain.com, that's www.whyagain.com. You'll be on our website. You can download the book free. There's all kinds of videos, audios, all kinds of things to play with. But the most important one to start with would be to hit the link that says Download Worksheets. And then the first two links under that particular link, you'll see one that is the New Discoveries in Aramaic Forgiveness. That's chapter 24 from my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And then the second link is a 7-step reality management process. And that's the how-to go inside yourself and change the content of your mind, how to be freed from any form of hostility or fear and get back to the point where you live as a human is designed to live. How is the human being designed to live? Well, in order to establish that, all you have to do is hold a newborn child. You'll know exactly what a human is designed to live out of. You'll know exactly what a human life is. And this stuff that passes for human life, this hostility, this fear, this rage, this grief, this pain going on in the world, has nothing to do with human life. You know, we're told by many people, well, you know, we're only human. Excuse me. Only human means that you're designed to function out of love. You're designed to experience love 24/7, 365. If you're not doing that, then that's not human life, that other stuff. And so we're here to invite you to own any form of hostility or fear that comes up in you at any time in your life. And, of course, many people will say, well, but, gee, Michael, that person over there, they really deserve this rage I'm pointing at them. Look at the terrible thing they did. And, you know, sometimes people do some pretty terrible things, and therefore they may deserve your rage. However, The question you want to ask yourself before you start throwing it out there is, do you deserve that rage? Because you're going to get the original of that energy. They're only going to get a carbon copy. And they may not be home for delivery. And so the whole idea of forgiveness from the Aramaic is to remove what never belonged and get back to a human life. Carol, how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Michael?
I am blessed and highly favored. We're enjoying the desert. We look out to the right and we look out to the left in this hot, sunny desert day, and we see mountains. And you're sitting by the beach. Is that what I understand?
I am. I look out, and I see water and palm trees. Yes, it's gorgeous.
No water here, although this last few weeks in the desert has been awesome. It is so green and beautiful. It's just amazing. The wildflowers, the colors, the greenery is just fabulous. And, of course, it'll be gone in a few weeks. But to be here in the spring has been really a cool experience. It's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to do that and to look at how the desert blooms and how alive it becomes. So it's been pretty cool.
Wow. You know, that's hard for me to imagine that the desert being green.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. The spring flowers, the colors, purples, yellows, reds, whites. I mean, just beautiful.
Now, I can see that. I can see the colors of them, but when I think of desert, I think of dry brown and then, like, these beautiful colors coming up through that.
Right. Well, it's actually, as we look out over it, it's still pretty green. It won't be that way much longer. It'll be back to that dry brown. But right now, the creosotes and the tumbleweed are green and lush and beautiful.
Wow, wonderful. Well, I wanted to let you know, I believe that Jeannie and David is here as well with us.
Hey, David, how are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderful, just realizing that it's Memorial Day.
It is Memorial Day, yes.
It is.
Yeah, I thought that there was something else that was going on. And, you know, here, interesting that Carol's talking about looking out and seeing the water, and you're looking out, seeing the desert, and here I am in the mountains looking out and seeing all the trees. And, you know, as you were talking about in a couple of weeks with them, things will shift and make a transformation into a different scenery there for you as it has for us here. And it just reminds me of, you know, that this is life. This is the involvement of where it is that I am today and what it is that I'm doing. And my awareness of being present right now and focused on where it is that I'm at with my life and what it is that I'm doing with this day is the seeds that plant my future, plant my tomorrow. So I just became aware that, this is Memorial Day as you guys were talking. And interesting enough that, again, the program, when we talk about it, is, you know, we're our design and what we're designed to live out of. And I'm wondering about all of the people that are living out of some fear, some hostility, and some remorse possibly for this is the day that's dedicated to the people that have given their life up for us, quote, to live in freedom. And it's kind of interesting to look at it in that way. What's the celebration about? Not sure.
Well, you know, one of the ideas of this work, one of the things we're working toward is to restore the experience of human life to humans. And when we do that, what's going to happen is the whole war game is going to disappear. And when the war game disappears, all those who've given their lives and gone through such horrific traumas as war puts upon a man or a woman, there's going to be a shift, there's going to be a change. And we're working toward that change because it's at the stage where if somebody doesn't do something soon, this planet's going to be gone, with the ability of so many people to push one button and, take the whole game out. And so our work is to restore human life to the earth. There's an interesting passage when you spoke, David, about this is life, and you've triggered some brain cells for a passage, and it's from the book of Luke. And many people look at the scriptures as religious books, but if you look at them as instructions for life, if you look at them as here's the how-to and here's the what's going on, it opens a whole different world of understanding. And there's a particular passage in Luke, I think it's 10:25 if I remember correctly, and it speaks about a scribe who stands up to test the man named Yeshua, popularly known as Jesus, but his name was actually Yeshua. And it says, a scribe stood up to test him and said, "Teacher, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life?" And so inherit kind of indicates something that's going to passively happen, but he wants to know what to do to have this thing called eternal life. And Yeshua turns the question back to him, and what I find most interesting about this particular passage is, in the last analysis, when you hear what the answer is, he doesn't answer the question that he's asked. He answers a totally different question. And so Yeshua turns the question back to the man, and he says, "Well, what do the scriptures say? How do you read it?" And the man says, "Well, you've got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And then Yeshua tells him what question that answers, and it's not the one about inheriting eternal life. What he says to the man is, "You spoke the truth. Do this, and you shall live." Now, I would offer that what Yeshua is saying to him in essence is, "Excuse me, sir, what are you doing talking about eternal life? You're not even alive. You are already dead. And the question you asked me is just an avoidance of your life here today. And so you know what the words are, but do you live the experience? Do you live the experience of love at every instant of your life toward the Creator, at every instant of your life toward your neighbor?" And in the Aramaic language, the word neighbor means anybody that you think about. Do you live as the active presence of love when you think of yourself? Or have you been involved in some kind of a degraded teaching that's taught you to degrade yourself and tear yourself down? And if you have, then you just violated the first law, and everything else is meaningless if you don't get that one in line, because there's no human life there. And if you look at the war makers, there's not much human life there. There's lots of hostility, lots of criticism, lots of condemnation, and there's always somebody else to use a nasty word about to pretend that someone's lower and therefore worthy of attack. You know, if you look at all of the wars that have been fought, one of the first things that happens is you have to make up a derogatory name for the so-called enemy instead of recognizing that this is, in fact, your brother and your sister. If we listen to Einstein says, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. One of the ways to get people to go and kill other people is to take away the knowledge that we are in fact connected and we are in fact one. Forgiveness restores that knowledge, and that's why we're working as diligently as we can to bring these tools to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And I'd offer that would be the best Memorial Day present that you could give every soldier that has ever lived and every wife, mother, or child that has ever lost a son or a daughter to the insanity called war. The best gift you could give on this Memorial Day, and there are lots of parades and lots of flag waving, but I'd offer the best gift you can give is to resolve the conflicts in your life, understand and learn forgiveness, Give up the energy of conflict, of rage, of fear, of vengeance, of hatred, and forgive, because those who refuse to do that are in the process energetically of setting up the next war. We need to take responsibility on an energetic level for what we're doing. So, David, I thank you for what you did by the years you spent in Vietnam. As a human being, I thank you for that. I'm not going to go into what I think of the way the whole game was set up, except let's start out with just being honest. The Gulf of Tonkin incident that started it all never happened, and from there, we could do all kinds of conversations. But for the fact that you went and did a part, I thank you and I honor you, and I also honor you for the work, you and every other soldier, for the work you've done to clean up your life, to move out of that hostility and fear-based mind and move back to a love-based mind. The greatest gift we could offer to each of these people who have given so much, so much. Carol, do we have any comments in the chat room or any callers on the line?
Not at this time. Everybody's just kind of listening and taking it all in. It seems like everybody's just enjoying the information that they're receiving. But if people would like to call in, the number is 646-200-4169, or if you have questions in the chat room, please type them in, and we'll get those to Michael and David and Jeannie and all of us.
Yes, for sure. So, Memorial Day, thank you to everyone who's ever been involved in, however correctly or incorrectly, in the process of war, for the losses that you've taken and the suffering that you've done. And we hold the space of wholeness, of healing, and of human life for you, that you are able to give up those horrendous, horrific memories and are able to free yourself from those things to move forward in the presence of a true human life, in the presence of love. Do you have any thoughts, David?
Michael, yeah, I was thinking that, if there were just a few people today that would take the opportunity in order to do some true forgiveness, the inner forgiveness work, then what a shift that would make. Because what I'm reflecting on in my projection of what is going on is that a lot of people, some people are this is a 3-day holiday weekend from work and so forth, and there are other people that are truly reminded of the people that have made a sacrifice, and that what it resonates in most people is are certain feelings of sadness maybe, and certain feelings, maybe of some anger and hostility, some loss, some grieving. It always opens up that opportunity for that. And I invite people to have another look at that from a different perspective. And the only way to see it from a different perspective, is I understand it through this work, is that first I must let go of the perception of the way it is that I'm looking at it. And that usually involves also experiencing the feelings that are attached and connected with that. Interesting enough, and I spoke to one of my comrades that I was in Vietnam with today, and only just realizing that this is Memorial Day, and I was talking with him, and we spent about 45 minutes discussing our experiences and the bonding that we had through our experience of Vietnam and of war. There is a heightened our relationship really developed strongly after returning home. He lived in Chicago and I lived in Kentucky. And our relationship really developed over the last 40 years, yet it stems from our experience of this, quote, brotherhood, unquote, this connection from that. And there is a certain heightened level of awareness and consciousness that comes out of that. And as he talked about, it's almost like a double-edged sword, though, that to live presently for that moment was very powerful. And then to return to live in what we talk about is a more unconscious level. For in my experience being in Vietnam was that living in a present moment, there was this awareness that the death could come any day, and then it shifted from that in that just being present, being able to observe and to experience people and time. It was the one period of my life that time had. I lost all track of time from the perspective of what day of the week it was, what week it was, and even what month it was. And in a way of living for that day. Now there was some, as I said, it's the double-edged sword of being conscious and aware that I'm alive, and at the end of the day may not. And then at the same time, to be put into an environment that is less threatening on a day-to-day basis, it was like there was no the level of being conscious and of opening up to true experiences of people changed, and there was all of the energy of fear and anger and sadness and grief that most veterans don't process through or get to process through, which is what I think is happening today with a lot of people. And this has all resonated, their past has been resonated, and often the country and society gets into this false sense of celebration of what it is that we accomplished and give it credence to this word of freedom, that we have freedom because of people that did this. And I've come to understand that a lot differently. So I just invite people to take a look at see what they would like to maybe let go of, so that they can see a different perspective of what this day really is about, and really check with some veterans and their experiences, and invite them to let go of some of the fear and the hostility and the grief and the sadness that comes out of remembering this day.
Well, David, one of the things that you trigger for me is a really powerful book, and something that we could all be doing our part in. And actually, it's also a film. You can order it on eBay. It's called Saved by the Light, and it's a story of a man who was military. He was an assassin. Liked his job. His name is Daniel Brinkley. True story. And Daniel, I've had Daniel say to me, Michael, I really liked my job. When I got the piece of paper with the name on it, that person was dead, and I liked what I did. And if you look at, the film, I really acknowledge Daniel for his courage to allow his life story to be told the way it was told, because he was a pretty rough and tumble, nasty, mean kid, young man. And he liked to kill people. And one day he picked up the phone to answer the phone, and the phone line was struck by lightning, and he was killed on the spot instantly. A hole blown in his heart, and I forget exactly how long he was out, but
like 30 minutes dead.
Something like 30 minutes. He was dead. At least they call it a near-death experience. As usual, the world's got things backward. I think what Daniel had was a near-life experience, not a near-death experience, because anybody who's functioning out of hostility and fear, as Yeshua said, if you're functioning out of love, you're alive. If you're not alive, as a human being is designed to be alive. And so what Daniel had as his body, with all of its generational memories in it shut down due to clinical death was he had a near-life experience. And it's the book that he wrote is called Saved by the Light. The movie is Saved by the Light. And he is embraced in love, and he is embraced in light, and he has to go back through and deal with every kill that he did. And as he goes back through and does that, I mean, he reviews the kills that he did from the point of view of the person that he killed. He's on the receiving end of the pain. Why? Because he carries that in his field. And when we carry experiences unresolved in our energy fields, when people talk about a life review, what they're saying is you've got to go back and process every energy that you're carrying in your field. So Daniel goes back and has that experience, is totally and completely embraced in love. At one presentation I heard him doing, he talked about, somebody asked him the question, what about hell? And his answer was, nobody said anything and I didn't ask. But here's this guy who's been mean, nasty all his life, and a killer, and he's embraced in love as he has this near-death experience, near-life experience. And I want to just explain what we're doing there. And in that near-life experience, he's told two key things that he brings back. And one of those things that he's told is, you are a powerful spiritual being, and love makes the difference. They're the two main messages that Daniel takes to audiences all over the world. And what he's done with his life since he had an actual human life experience, what he's become famous for, is he goes to veterans' homes, he goes to VA facilities, and he sits and holds the hand of the dying, of the soldier who has so much trauma and so much pain that this death is a terror for them, or perhaps a relief for them. Daniel sits with them and loves them. He walks them through the death experience under the support of love and in the space of healing. And he's started many hospice centers in VA facilities around the country. And what Daniel does, although he shared with me, whoever's making noises back there, could you silence your phone? Could you put it on mute while you're? What Daniel does is he's shared with me that he still struggles with those old realities. He's still got his work to do, but his prime mover is that of love. And again, the greatest thank you, the greatest gift that we could give to anyone who's been involved in that insanity called war, in that non-human experience called war, is to bring the active presence of love to them and bring them solace and bring them healing and allow them or support them in processing out all of those horrific memories that are held, the ones that Daniel had to go back through. If we can shine the active presence of love there, and of course we can't do it if we're filled with hostility and fear. Forgiveness is a necessity to do that. So as we go in and we apply forgiveness to our own internalized hostilities and fears, we can become the space of love that supports the healing of the insanity that has led us to slaughter, in the last century, about 130 million people. And to remove that suffering and that pain and that trauma from the planet so that human life can once again be restored. That's our work. That's what we're here to do, and that's what we invite you to join us in doing. And in particular, every person who picks up a worksheet and says, I'm in fear, I'm in rage, I'm going to start to be responsible for this part of my life and remove it, they take one step closer to being empowered to heal. And when enough of us are empowered to heal, when we hit a critical mass, we're going to shift this pain and this trauma, and we're going to live as humans. And again, David, you've been resident and such awesome support for 4 years there at Heartland, and been doing the work that we're talking about. And I don't know if there's anything that you, from the military point of view, would and the shifts that you've made in your 4 years at Heartland and the years of work you've done since you were in Vietnam. I know that you started with other bodies of work and finally arrived at this as being a solution for healing. But if you have anything to share in that regard, maybe something concrete that you've seen that has helped to shift you out of that violence and into a different space, just to give everybody a taste of that possibility.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Just before you start, David, maybe we'll just ask if there are any comments in the chat room or any questions on the phone. Carol?
No, everybody's just kind of listening. So
okay, cool.
I did put it. If they would like to ask something in the chat room, please let me know, and I'll get that information to you. Or they could call in at 646-200-4169.
Awesome. So, David, anything in particular that you would share that might inspire and or show what's possible with the tools and changes that we can make as humans?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. When you talk about the different bodies of work that I've been involved in doing, I know that it's ongoing for me daily of making a choice and recognizing that I can come from this space, and that when I come from this space of love, that to have that and to understand that on the experiential level is what's so important. And your connection with inviting people to hold a newborn and to resonate with that essence of that newborn. Well, for me, I've always had that. Now, I had that, and I have that to this day, only I wasn't able to at that of my return, let's say, from Vietnam. And things began before Vietnam, with my childhood, with my upbringing and so forth. And it wasn't that it was bad or and it was pretty challenging. I just learned how to survive. That's really, in essence, what I was doing, and I was just learning ways to survive. When I went to Vietnam and then I returned, I remember that my mother said something to me years later, and when I say years later, it was at least 10, 15 years later, that she told me, she said, "You are not the son that left and returned." And I never got that. I didn't understand it. Yet my mother knew, because she gave me birth. And whether she was able to really tap into that, and for the wives and the mothers that may have been out there and that could recognize that. And it's interesting for me to take a look at photos of when I went in to the service, and even when I went to Vietnam, that 1 year later, within 1 year, and sometimes it's reflected and called there was a maturity about people, and it wasn't maturity. That I remember my picture from my graduation from my basic training when I first went into the service, and then a year later, maybe 16 months later, when I returned to back to the States, and then a picture was taken. It was like this kid was in a Boy Scout outfit, and then to look at that, total difference. So I never understood really what my mother meant, and until just several years ago, actually, was this work you were talking about tapping into, and it kind of resonates now with it, that I had these experiences. First, there was the training and the condition of it, and then to actually go through that, it really embeds it within one's psychic. I did an interview with CSN, or who's the big one of. I did several TV interviews when I was living in Nashville, and I remember on a one of the parades that were after the Gulf War, and people were coming back, and I did an interview, and I asked him, I said, so what do you think is the most significant, what do you think is the biggest sacrifice that you could give anyone? And most people will answer that they gave their life for someone else. And I said, so what do you think is the most significant thing next to that? And there was this kind of question, and what came to me was the biggest sacrifice is to take someone else's life. And that's what people do. That's what I did, was that I took someone else's life in a sacrifice for approval and acceptance of other people, of a belief system. And to me, I thought that was probably, and I didn't get it. I had it at the time and never really understood it. That was a real sacrifice, because I was willing to, based on what it is that I believed, take another person's life based on the principle of what someone else said was good. And of course, and then coming back to the States, and a lot of Vietnam veterans have had this, and quite frankly, I think that there's going to be even more damage and things that are going to happen with the veterans that are coming now from the Iraqi war, is that the Vietnam veteran was kind of put to the side, that it wasn't acknowledged, and so there was this real challenge then of doing something that was supposed to represent a sacrifice, which is taking someone else's life. It wasn't so much giving the life. Actually, in my perspective of it, giving the life was the sense of appreciation and acknowledgement and willingness to take someone else's life. And that stays with people regardless of what they say. So that when a person returns, if they do not have a real way to process and to let go of the guilt and the fault and the blame and the shame, because there is that underneath of that, regardless of anyone that's said that's ever taken anyone's life, I know through my experience and in talking with hundreds, if not thousands of other veterans about this, that there's still a guilt and fault and the blame and the shame that's underneath of that, because ultimately our true essence is to increase life rather than to destroy life, rather than to take life. And
so then today, I presume what you'd probably do would be to do a worksheet with them instead of kill them. Would that be a fair statement?
With the veterans?
Michael, we do have a caller that's waiting, and can I just tap into this just a little bit as well? Because I have a background. I have a background of being with my husband, who was in the service. I was married to him for 20 years. We were Army. So, I see both sides of this. What David said earlier is that I've seen soldiers go to war, men and women, and when they come back, they're not the same person. They're so different, no matter if it's in the Vietnam War or if it's the Desert Storm or the Iraqi War. What's been happening too is they still come back and they're different. They somehow they've lost part.
We lost you. Are you there?
I guess so. No sick now.
Nope, sounds good.
All right. Just
Carol, we've lost you. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what happened to Carol. We lost her, and so we'll give her a second to get back on. Maybe she lost her phone connection. I don't know. Hello, okay. Carol. We've lost you out there in Radio Land. And we have a caller, but of course we can't hear the caller till Carol pushes the button to put them through. And so not sure just what occurred.
Michael, if you remind me, maybe at this point or at another point, to me what's coming across for me now is when you talk about that when we give up our true essence of who it is that we are as children, then I think also that there's also that transition, and it's just coming through to me, of when people go off to war, that there's another level of giving up, a real, at an almost an adult level, at least an older level, a more conscious level of language anyway, that even gave up that true essence of who it is, of doing those kind of acts. Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about?
Okay, Michael, sorry, I got kicked off here. But you do have a caller that's been waiting for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, at the switchboard, there we go. It's area code 702.
702, welcome.
Hello, Michael.
Where are you calling from? Hey there. That sounds like Dr. A. Hi.
I'm at work. I'm listening to your program, and it's all very touching stories. But I can say from my perspective, fortunately, I've never had to live through the violence of war, at least personally, or not in my family that I know of. But the only way that I know that people can escape all of their programming from what they did is to do your work, and so it's my intention to try and teach everybody what you're bringing forward, so that they don't have to continue to live with all of this guilt and all these problems in their mind. I just read on the internet that there's approximately 300,000 homeless veterans, which is pretty much of a shame, and that's a pretty amazing number. When we remember the people who've fallen, we should remember the people who are living on the streets as well, in pain.
Yeah, and the number of suicides in vets is just horrendous, and everyone just adds to the suffering and the pain of everybody as we go through this experience.
As well as incarcerated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of the largest populations in the jails in America are Vietnam vets.
The question I have for you, Michael, is you may have been in situations like this, I'm sure you have, is what happens if you're in the presence of people who are aggressive, people who are talking with things that are very much unlike love in their vocabulary, talking about hate, talking about killing? It's a difficult choice to directly confront them with this matter. What is your best second option when you don't feel that you can directly confront them about their pains and their issues?
Well, of course, that's why we have a whole series of tools in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again work, from communication to still point breathing. You know, in the state where there's not much rational awareness, one of our first goals is to give a person the possibility and the space to move to something different. And if there's willingness to do that, one of the most powerful, of course, is the still point breath process. And so we're out there with every tool we can provide. And there are times when somebody is irrational, and to the point where if there's threatened or there's physical violence, then there are appropriate measures in our society for holding people accountable for that. And in an intensive, the answer would be all of the above. Every tool we have, every tool we teach, in terms of how to change those internal dynamics in ourselves. And of course, if I have fear about someone who's being aggressive, then that's my next piece of work, and just moving forward into the space of healing. And, of course, there are always going to be people, or at least at this stage, there are people who don't want to go there, who don't really wish to face themselves, don't wish to be responsible, and want to dump it on everybody else. And that's a really powerful cry for love that oftentimes is only perceived as attack. But I think that the person who's in pain and turmoil and trauma is looking for someone to hold that space and someone to assist them in being alleviated of the pain that they carry. It's only in pain that that kind of hostility, rage, and fear comes out.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes, if I may add with that, because you had asked me a question about an experience of that, and when you just now mentioned someone holding the space for that, there was this man, his name is Jerry Washington, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he was actually one of the people that started the group I worked with called Base Camp out of Nashville, Tennessee. And when one of the acts that I did was through him, and in talking with him, one of the most significant days of my life was that he told me I could give up violence. And I remember sitting there and wondering, what is he talking about? And I said, what do you mean, give up violence? And he said, you just give it up. And I asked him, how do you do that? And there's some background noise that's going on there. I don't know where it's coming from. So I asked him so how do I do that? And he said, just give it up. And I remember then committing that I was giving up violence, that I would give up violence. And from that day forward was really the shift and the change, and everything from that absolutely shifted for me. And to this day, as far as doing any violence towards anyone in a physical way, it's never happened. And now there have been some unconscious things and things that went through my mind with that. And so my support and encouragement is for people to begin it that way. And I needed someone there to support me in letting go of that. And so as the caller was asking about, what to do when other people are expressing that, that's what resonated for me, was that I always need to be doing my work so that when a person is around and their stuff comes up, like Jerry Washington did for me, because I was really expressing some violence and from validating some reasons of why that I wanted to take certain action and had been taking certain action, and he held the space for me to let go of that. And so that's my encouragement and support of any time that someone is expressing that, as you pointed out, it's a cry for some help and for some support. And I've noticed that what I've been able to do now is to be able to hold that space of love, of understanding, of compassion, of willingness to be the space while they process through that. And that's the beginning. And to do it with all of the tools, as you said, all of the above, all of the tools, and a different tool for each event. So that's the key to it.
Yeah, and David, as you talk about that, I remember you sharing that with me several years ago, and then while that old friend anger still hung around, and the day that you decided that you were going to give that up was a pretty monumental shift to the next level. Can you share about that?
Yeah, actually that was in line with just exactly, that was kind of like another step, a major step, as you said, that I, in essence, what I was doing was giving up the violence against myself. That before I was, in my projection of it, it was giving up the physical violence. And this was about giving up violence about even the thought process, the experience of it, the thoughts that are within me, and the expression of it with anyone else. That if I expressed it in thought, just or in tonality and doing it, rather than where before it was the level of giving it up on a physical level, then I gave it up on a emotional level, on a mindset level. That, wow, this is what I'm doing, and I gave that up. The rage, actually, what it was. The rage was what it was that I was giving up. Was the rage versus the violence. To me, there's a significant difference. And some folks, and this is my perspective, a lot of times when people are talking about that, people, how can someone do something so violent? And there's background noise again. So, in someone doing something, how could they do such a violent thing? I would offer that when someone's doing that violent thing, there's no feeling hurt. There really is no feeling. Feeling
right.
I'm trying to that. And,
the love is disappeared.
Yeah, it's just gone with that. So to consciously choose to let go of that. Pardon me?
And that's where all of our wars come from. And when we're willing to give that up, everything starts to change, for sure.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that someone who's in violence is in pain, mental, emotional pain, then that's where the healing process begins, is in the willingness to look at and deal with that mental, emotional pain and work through it and walk out the other side. And
I think what the caller asked is really such an important question to address. And what I've experienced in what it's about for me is always for me to be aware of what is going on inside of me at the time and take responsibility for those feelings, and to then teach my mind different ways to, quote, react to that, and to come, rather than so much teach my mind, is to connect with my highest guidance. And that will guide me in knowing exactly what it is to say and do. The analogy we use with an attorney or a prosecutor and a court.
Are you on the speakerphone, David?
Pardon me?
Are you on the speakerphone right now? Your voice is getting kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, it's coming in and out.
Yeah, but it can it'd probably be better.
Okay.
Much better.
Good. So it's about the whole idea of me being conscious and aware of what it is that I'm feeling, and then take responsibility for that. And that is the challenge. That's the challenge for me each moment of my day. And with support, I'm able to move through that much quicker. So.
That's definitely one of the keys, is that having the support to move in a different direction than what our family systems and what our culture's taught us. It's awesome. And the voice who asked the question is Dr. Andraki, and so I'll come back to Dr. Andraki and see if you have any other thoughts or questions or input of any kind. Are you still with us?
No, he dropped off.
Oh, okay. All right. Carol, we lost the end of what you were saying earlier. Did you get to complete, or was there more that you had to share when we lost you there?
Well, it was just, that I see, these soldiers, they go, and I've been down there, like in Fort Texas back in 2004, and when these soldiers come back, men and women, you could literally feel the difference in the energy shifting. It almost felt like there was such a death wish when they came back. And so these soldiers they have so much going on. with themselves that this truly needs to be addressed within each of them, so we don't end up with, like what's happened to the Vietnam veterans, because they're not getting the counseling, the needs, even in today's society and the things that we have all consciously aware of. Since the Vietnam War, but these soldiers really need our attention as well. And not only that, but the families go through so much, because I've been on both ends with this. And so it's really something that people really need to take a look at, even like today, with all of what's happening. Because if you think about it, wasn't it last year or in 2009 when Fort Hood actually had a soldier that went in and killed a bunch of other soldiers there on the base?
Right. Yeah. It's the energy and the work that's required to bring a shift in this whole game has just got to happen, and it's got to happen soon. And it's there's such internalized pain. And when one has no tools with which to deal with that pain, it gets to be crazy time. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a little hesitation here because we're just got rescued from the side of the road, and mechanic's going to jump in the car and take it for a test drive.
I'm back, Michael. It seems like I wasn't able to finish this, but anyways, I think it's something that we need to all still take a look at, what's happening with our soldiers and our vets and everything right now.
Yeah, definitely. Huge amounts of support, and when you look at the difficulty, I know I have a friend who's a very close friend in Florida, and we went down to spend some time with him back a few months ago, and he was in tears each time he would have to go to the VA. And when I was there, he would ask me if I would go with him because it was just terror. I mean, they terrorized him. The fear, the pain, and the lack of understanding. At one point, he had a woman that he worked with that was a psychologist on the staff there, and he started to really make some breakthroughs and make some progress with her. And, under the rules of the game, he had, 3 visits with her or something, and then he was cut off from it. And, he was like, but I'm making progress here. What are you doing? And it's like, oh, well, too bad. Our rules say this. Our rules say that. And people just, we really need to put more money into the support and the healing of our vets than we put into war. And,
absolutely.
Ripped off for that support. That, there's lots of rhetoric about, those who served and honoring them. But to honor them would mean we really, truly are there. We don't have a bureaucracy for them to fight in order to get, the smallest things, the smallest types of support they need. I mean, that's insane. And it's time for us to wake up with the culture. And we need to start to count. When we look, I think Iraq's something like about 1.5 trillion right now. This was going to be a few billion 10 years ago, where I was reading the other day about 1.5 trillion. And these soldiers coming back are committing suicide. David, I think you mentioned the statistics the other day. We've got about 90 seconds, but I think you mentioned some statistics the other day about the number of suicides from Iraqi vets. David, did you have some of that at your fingertips?
16 or 17 a day.
Yeah, it's huge down there. It's huge with these soldiers coming back because you can feel it and taste it in the air.
Yeah. And we need to do something, and this work is our effort to do that, something that will bring support. Healing, we're down to 1 minute, so I'm going to just offer once again our prayer, our blessing, our love, and support for those who have been forced to go through that atrocity, and even those who said, and I like it, which there are some guys, I guess that's their thing, the underlying pain needs to be healed, and we're here to support that healing process. And thank you to each and every one of you for what you've done. And I invite all of our audience to consider, how can you support the healing of a vet? How can you support the healing of a family who's gone through such incalculable loss as has happened to her? And as we do that together as a nation and as a team, we will create the best year yet on planet Earth of our eternal lives. Blessings.
Blessings.